Hello, hello. Hi, Rhonda. Good to see you. Hi, Joan. Hi, Peggy. Good to see all of you. Join me, join me. It's a rainy day here today. Drizzly day. Sure is. How are you guys? Hope you're doing well. Very much, I hope you're doing well. Each and every one of you. Come on in, come on in. Yeah. I am doing well, thank you. Today, I've officially been married to this man 8 months. He has withstood me for 8 whole months. He surely has. Hey, Connie. For your reunion? Cool. Oh, it's hot where Joan is. No matter how much room you have, there's never enough. No matter how much. It does fly, doesn't it? I hope you have a great time, Connie. Hope you have a great time. Do you live in the same community where you graduated, or do you have to travel? I mean, 8 months. He has stood the test of time for 8 months. We are very lucky. We are very lucky, each of us. Okay, so it is, let's see, we'll just chat for a minute. Same area. Oh, that's good. Mr. Bean, I'm not sure who you are. I can't remember. Hi, Kathy. You got here at the beginning. You did, Kathy. Mr. Bean, remind me who you are. Hi, Linda. Hello to Tim. Hello to Tim and Linda. Hi, Mickey. I guess it's Mr. Bean. That's what it looks like to me. Glad to have a drama-free Friday here in California. I bet you are. I bet you are. A lot going on. Lori. Boy, have you been here before, Lori? Am I having a moment? I don't remember. Anyway, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Good to see you in the chat. Okay. So I have lots of things to show you and lots of things to get to today. So let's get started. So one of the things I wanted to show you is that, remember we were working with these bullet-tipped Sharpie creative markers. I'm going to show you. I have a lot stuffed into one little bag, so I'm going to kind of pull some of them out here. We used a bunch of these when we were embellishing these little cards. So these were the cards that we did with the bingo daubers. Yeah. Hi, Susan. Oh, I'm glad you're here. Good. Welcome, welcome. Oh, Lori's been in the balcony for many years. Well, welcome to the chat. Nobody bites that I'm aware of, so that's good. I'm glad you guys took a chance and came on in. That's great. Welcome, welcome. So these, where we have the dots here and some of these, those were all done, and the yellow dots here, those were all done with these Sharpie creative markers. This set up back here. Pardon my ugly bandage on my finger today. These come in 2 different kinds, the bullet tip like this, and then also a brush marker. And I have both, but for doing dots like that, if you want to do dots on something, the bullet tip is the one that certainly makes life easier for you. Well, when I was in Walmart the other day, I realized that they now have another set. So I'm going to see if I can change places. They come in sets of 12. And I don't know that I have all 12 out here. We'll find out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's one more. Might be this one. Here, the colors are here. These are the colors right here. These are the colors of the new ones. They're called earth tones. Now, I'm not sure I would call that earth tones myself, but they're lovely. They really are lovely colors. I would call them more pastel than earth tones, but these are the colors right here, including this one. Okay, so here they are, give or take. I'm trying to keep them from scooting back down in the bag. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, there's another one that's escaped here somewhere, but anyway, you kind of get, there's all of them. Okay, so there's the brighter ones, and then the earth tones, they're called. And this is a pink. It's looking like it's really pale, but it's this corally pink. It's this color right here, that corally pink. Anyway, I just thought I would show you. And I did not get the bullet or the brush tips in these this time. I may go back and get them at some point. But most of these are just the bullet tips, because honestly, I find that I reach for the bullet tips the most. So I just thought I would show you those. They are at Walmart. They cost about $14, $15, I think. You gotta love these. You gotta love these markers. Now the thing that you might not like about them is that they are opaque. So if you like to blend color over color, these are not your go-tos. You would want something more like an alcohol-based marker like a Copic, or a watercolor marker like Tombow. Those are going to be much more translucent and blendable. These are opaque, but they're great if you want to do dots on top of things, because they will block out. Opaque means they block out what's underneath. Okay, so there you go. You gotta love a good Sharpie. You really do. So there's that. All right, let's talk. One more thing that I got that was new this week is I got a book. And this, if you know me very well, you know that I like to do all different kinds of creative things. Today we're going to get our craftiness on, which is not a word that I enjoy using, but we're going to do that today. I tend to think of everything as just being creativity, not labeling whether it's art or craft. And so this book I happened to see, actually I'd seen it once before, and I think at the bookstore that I used to go to, or the mixed media and scrapbooking store that I used to go to, I think they did this in book club, but I don't know, I missed out on it for some reason. Anyway, so I saw the book. I had asked if they had another copy in the store, and they did not, so I finally just ordered one. And it's an interesting little book. The illustrations are, and the stitching style is unique. This is the author of the book, I believe. And the photography is very nice. It's very kind of has a real vintagey vibe about it. And there is her book right here that she worked on. So a lot of what she does is outline stitches and French knots, and I mean, some of these things are just really nice to look at, you know, inspirational things. Who wouldn't like to have that up in your creative space, except you have to dust it. Janet Nash would like it. Yeah, The thing about if you have something like this, like I have one of these that's actually a printer's tray. I'm not sure whether this is or not, but I have an old printer's tray that we did collected a bunch of stuff from our son's senior year of high school and put into the tray. And so it's a great idea in the moment. It's a great idea at the time until you have to clean the sucker. And then you're like, ugh, what was I thinking, right? Okay, so the secret to that is put a piece of nylon stocking, which I had to actually go buy some because I don't have any nylon stockings anymore. So I bought some knee-high nylon stockings because I needed some for in the art room. Put that over the end of your hose of your vacuum cleaner. So put it over the end, and I rubber band it on really well so it won't come off, and then use that, hold that over the printer's tray, and it would work for this as well. And just run across all that. And you would not imagine how much, if there's dust bunnies and stuff, it will trap them at the end of the vacuum hose, and it will suck all the dust out of there. And if any of your stuff is not securely fastened to the tray, it won't suck it into the vacuum cleaner. It won't do that. It might pull it out, but it won't suck it out. So, yeah. Anyway, it's a good, hi Barbara Clark. It's a good way to do that. So I just thought I would go through here, and she has, the tools and materials and lots of inspiration, and the threads that she likes to use. But you can see everything has a very vintagey, kind of sketchy look about it. And if you like that, it's great. If you don't like that, then you might prefer another style of embroidery. Okay, here's a good example of it, of the embroidery. So very sketchy, and oh yeah, I wish I could say it was an original idea, but it's not. The idea of cleaning stuff like that, but it really does help. It really does help. So anyway, and then at the back there are patterns back here in the back, and they're iron-on transfers. So if you want to use her designs, you can actually iron them onto, it has to be the right kind of fabric in order to iron them on. But there you go. In other words, it has to be a fairly smooth fabric for it to really transfer, because these are not real solid lines. Okay. Anyway, so I just thought I would show that to you in case any of you were interested. You also can take that same idea, even if, I find inspiration wherever I find it. And so I can take that idea and use that as a jumping off point to create a stitching journal. Like a lot of people do the stitching scrolls, stitch their day into a scroll, because then it's a small section of a long piece of fabric that's wound either around a spool or a stick or whatever other kind of thing you might want to use, a dowel. It could be anything. But you could people sometimes do that. But then if you wanted to do a journal, you could do something fairly small. You could do something big, whatever. Anyway, food for thought. So that's Journal with Thread by Jessie, and her last name is Chorley, I think. Chorley. Yeah. Very simple designs. And I think what is cool about that is it lets you know that you don't have to do complex things to be creative. Yeah. Barbara's getting into embroidery, following along with Jerry Bellini. Jerry's really, really good with the fabric. Natalie Channon, yeah, she is amazing. Yeah, she is amazing. And okay. Well, it's time for Barb's Vintage Corner, apparently. Because, you know, one of these days I'm going to get through this house. I'm telling you, one of these days I'm going to be done with this house. I am in the downhill slope, I think. I hope. I'm sure Elton hopes so, because I have had more meltdowns. Bless his heart. He keeps hanging in there, but you know, you just get to a point where it's like, I just need to be done with this job now, right? In case you don't know, I'm moving from my house to this house where I'm broadcasting. Okay. Yesterday, I went through, the last couple of days, I've been going through my bookshelf at the other house. Okay, that's not entirely true. I had multiple bookshelves. I'm on the last bookshelf. The last bookshelf, okay? On this bookshelf, just to give you an idea, it doesn't look all that big, just to walk in the room and look at it. It doesn't look that big, but it's 2 sections from the floor, not to the ceiling, but it's probably 6 or 7 shelves of books, and they're not super wide, maybe 36 inches in width. You can cram a lot of books into that space, and there's 2 of those. Then in the center, this thing joins and it goes in a corner. In the center is the piece, they're all connected together. It's not a real expensive unit, let me tell you, but it's lasted us a long time. Centerpiece in the middle, and I think that was supposed to be for a TV maybe, but that didn't work in this room, because there's a big section in the middle that we use for displaying wood carvings and things like that. I see that Elton has popped into the chat to say amen, that he hopes I will get done with this soon too. Yep, we both do. And then above it, there are doors that have like stained glass, but they're clear type things, and 2 shelves. These go back into the corner. That's where we put a lot of the figurine type things that we had. And then under that whole thing, there is looks like a drawer, but it's actually a drop down door, and then 2 more doors that cover the bottom. And this goes back into the corner. Well, you can stuff a myriad of junk in those spaces that are closed off. The ones that are open or behind glass, not so much, but the ones underneath. And it took quite a while for me to get through all of that yesterday. But the fun part about it was I found some old cassette tapes that I'm going to entertain Elton with later. Some funny things. Anyway, and I do still have a thing I can play the cassette tapes on if they're not rotten, you know, which could be. Anyway, that bookshelf unit is empty. And there was also stuff on top of it. The bookshelf unit and the storage thing is empty. And then I have a bookshelf unit next to it, which used to be up in the studio, on the studio level. For a number of reasons, I had to move it to the lower level. And it has many of my art books. And those I got taken care of, except for the bottom shelf, which is magazines. And it is magazines primarily of quilting arts. I have quilting arts magazines from the very first issue, and I so wish I had someone I could give them to. I really, really do. They are extraordinarily heavy to do anything with, and I really wish I could give them to somebody. Anyway. So there you go. I don't know what I'm going to do with those, but that's my job either today or tomorrow, is to go through and make some hard decisions with that. Anyway, so amongst the bookshelves, there are some things that I find that I don't even know how I come by them or why I have them, or, you know, how they came into my possession. I'm assuming that I just don't really know. I won't even say why I'm assuming anything because I don't know. But this is a beautiful little book that I'm going to show you. And it is little. And I will show you how big this is. It is it's about 4¼ inches wide. Hey, Dorothy. It has been a 10-month ordeal. It certainly has. By 6 inches tall. So that gives you an idea. It's the size of a postcard. Okay, 4 by 6. It is tiny as books go. But what I want to show you is it's very old, but look how beautiful. You can just barely see it. It's a cloth cover. You can barely see the embellishments in the corners, and it's beautiful embellishments. I'm trying to get the light to reflect on it. There we go. The light will kind of reflect on it. It is very, very subtle. There's embellishment on the cover. I don't think there's any title on the cover. Lots of dots, and don't you know we like that, all around the edge of the cover. There's the spine, which may have had the book title on it at some point up here. I don't know. The back seems to be plain, but that's what it looks like. And this was a book that that was given to my grandmother in 1897, Christmas of this is 1897, from Laura, and Peggy may be able to correct me. I think that, I don't know, that's a relative of some kind, I think. Peggy might know. I really don't know. Hey, Linda. Purple Nana Linda. Aw. Well, big hugs to you, Linda. I hope you feel better soon. And this is a copy of, it's very fragile, of Black Beauty. But you know that if it was given to her in 1897, you can imagine how fragile and very old this is. And it has illustrations in it that are beautiful. I mean, I love things like this. You know, I did not hang on to very many things like this, but this one, I back and forth about whether I was going to keep it or not. This is Black Beauty, you know, and it finally made the cut. But look at the costuming. Yeah, isn't that neat? Doesn't sound familiar. So it might have been a friend. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, Black Beauty. It's a tiny little book, and one of the reasons I decided to keep it is because it's not very big. And also because it was from my grandmother, whom I never knew, never met her. But and this was her maiden name. So yeah, isn't that neat? In our family, there were 4 generations of Grace. There was this grandmother, then our mother, then our sister, and then her daughter. And they all had different middle names, but they were all named Grace. So I just thought I would share that with you. Okay, now the other thing that I have, again, I'm not sure how I ended up with this. However, I did, and so I thought I would share it with you because I really didn't think I still had it, but it was on the bookshelf. Okay, so our father, Peggy, that's in the chat, and my father, our father, taught at the university, And so this precedes all computerization. Okay. My dad never had a computer when he was teaching. If he had visual aids like this, they were created by him or someone. There was no computerization. As close as he got to modern technology was a typewriter or a Xerox. It's not Xerox. The one with the stinky purple ink. The duplicating machine that had the stinky purple ink that they would, when they handed out your test, if it was fresh off the whatever the machine was, somebody will write it in the chat. When they'd hand that out, and it was so heavy with the mimeograph. Thank you, Julie. Thank you and welcome. Good to see you in the chat. Yes, mimeograph. You know, you'd stand there and you'd crank the thing and it would spit out all the pages. But if they didn't get it copied quick enough, the ink would still be wet and everybody in the class would be about high as a kite. So those were the days. Anyway, so this was some of his visual aids from his class that he taught. And so I thought I would show these to you because these, although this related to flower arrangement, this also will relate to any kind of artwork. So proportion and scale, size relationships, okay? So this, in any kind of art endeavor, you're most successful if you include all these different things in your artwork. And so I'm just going to go through these and show you. So this has to do with flower arranging. And so this is a vase, and this is explaining to you the rule of thirds in relationship to flower arrangement. So there's that. Okay. Balance and focus. So you have symmetrical or asymmetrical. So you still can be balanced. Let me see. This is poster board. I'm just making sure I'm not picking up two at a time. I don't think I am. I photographed all these at one point, and I have them in my computer someplace because I was afraid they were going to break down, but good grief, they're really old, and there's nothing wrong with them, I'll tell you. Line, so you've got line, and again, this relates to flower arrangement, but you can translate that right on over the elements of design on our journal pages or canvases or whatever. Form, in this case, you have the different shapes of form. Size and space relative to surroundings and or background. So here's the background. It's like an art journal page. If you take an art journal page and you plunk some little thing in the middle of it, unless that's what you really want, it's going to look kind of unbalanced, you know. So here you go. Here is your procedure: show schedule, preparation, organization, select design, materials. So this must have been when he was preparing a group to go to a show. Flower stems, foliage, accessories, containers, mechanics and tools, workspace, conditioning. I don't know what that is. Arrange, critique, show for the fun of it, what the judges look for. So I don't have a clue. Anyway, here's color. So this was a color wheel. Okay, so this is a color wheel. And so you have red, blue, and yellow. And then your secondary colors, you have orange, purple, and green. And then you have your tertiary colors also. Contrast, we have cool and warm. So, you know, the color wheel applies to everything, right? Rhythm and repetition, this is also still part of the elements of design. Leads the eye from one point to another and a focus. An element is repeated to give a feeling of movement and rhythm, and also to make things cohesive. Contrast and dominance. Sizes, large versus small. Forms, circular, oval, angular. Textures, coarse versus fine. Colors, light, dark, bright versus dull. Any combination of the above. So anyway, I just thought I would show those to you. Yes. I know, color, it never changes. Color wheel is always the same. So anyway, I just thought I would show those to you. And that completes the vintage portion of this stream. But what we're going to do next relates to my life from years ago, and it made a resurgence. Actually, we'll table that for a minute. Let's go back to what we did last week, and let's talk about this, because I revisited this. Absolutely nothing in my life is finished unless I have, like I was going to say, if it's fabric and I bound it and put it on the wall, it's finished. Or if I put it under glass and hung it on the wall, it's finished. Not necessarily, because I've been known to take things down and go, yeah, I don't like that, or I want to do more. And so the piece that we were working on, I think a week ago or so, I decided there were things about it I didn't like, so I revisited it. And so what I'm going to talk to you about, what this process was, in case you weren't here. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome, Rhonda. What I wanted to explain to you, just to review, this is just a piece of drawing paper. It's not heavy at all. By the time you get done putting a lot of stuff on it, it gets a lot beefier. So I would not, in this case, want to start out with watercolor paper, put all this stuff on it, because it's going to get really stiff. And I want to be able to do something with this. So I want it to have some body more than the drawing paper, but I don't want it to have too much, because then I can't bend it. And so what I did was I used a bunch of deli paper and tissue papers. You can see the strips. So those were pieces. Some of them were, kind of full strips, and some were partial strips that I collaged down just using matte medium as the background. And then I came back with black acrylic ink, and I used an Inktense pencil dipped in the ink to draw these flower forms. Okay? You just finished your hidden paper clips. You have the big dark inky flowers. Oh, I bet they're beautiful. Yeah, I bet they are. So I drew the flowers on just, with the part about this, you can't control it, and that's the good news. The bad news is you can't control it. So sometimes you have to work with what you're given. But I dipped the pencil. You can go back, a week or so ago and see the process. And so I dipped the pencil in the ink, and it was the Inktense pencil, and then I just started drawing. And I went around and I just kind of twisted and turned the pencil as I drew, so I would get a variation in the thickness of the line. And then, remember the grouping of posters I just showed you had the whole thing about line on it? That's not different today than it was then. Variation in line width and stuff, it's a good thing. Yeah. So then I took, before it was dry, each piece, before it was dry, I took sections of toilet paper, and you need to use a fairly decent toilet paper, and lay it in the ink has to be wet when you do that. Lay it down in the wet ink and kind of pat it with your fingers and then pull it off. And it will soak up the excess ink, and it will also kind of spread the lines a little bit, which is fun. Okay? All right. And so that's what, this is the stage right over here, this part. That is that stage pretty much right there. Okay? And then what we did last week at some point, I don't know which class it was, which day it was, I used Inktense pencils, which are like these. I just used the Inktense pencils and the colors that we're kind of picking up in the piece of paper. And I put them in the various sections, the various petals of the flowers. And then I used water and this iridescent medium to blend that out. And so what that gave me was this iridescent quality. I'm going to see if I can catch it. There, you can see it up here. As the light hits it, it has that iridescent quality on the flowers. I had originally put iridescent medium over the whole thing in the background, and then I put a coat of matte medium over it and matted out the whole thing. Not smart. And because I like that iridescent quality, so I went back and used the iridescent medium and water to blend the flowers. Okay? Then I went back, as we were working together, I put white dots over the black. And I put the black lines in the flowers. The black lines I'm okay with. The white dots just made everything the same level of brightness. And I'm like, I don't like that. Right? So, how do you fix? Because a lot of doing creative things is doing something, messing it up, and going back and fixing it. In fact, I watched an art video the other day. Just a minute, I'll tell you who it is. Let me see if I can find it. I think her name is Andrea. Give me just a second. She did, yeah, here it is. Andrea Nelson Art. That is who it was. Andrea Nelson Art. And she did a video. It was a pretty long video. She doesn't usually do long videos, but she did a pretty long video on painting 3 pairs. And they were on an iPad in front of her. And so she was following a process by another artist where you paint the thing and then you destroy it with whatever markers or whatever, you scrape, color over the surface or whatever, and then you paint it again. You do the same thing and you do it several times until you're finally happy with it. And I guess that's where that sparked an idea in my head. I don't really know. But anyway, what I did because I didn't like the results I had. So I took, hey Terry. And so I took a black Posca in the very finest point that I have. And I went back over all of those white dots. And I went over all the lines. And if there were some that needed to be more connected to make them look more like petals, that's what I did. If I needed, whatever I felt like it needed, I just spent, and this, if I were to sell this piece of paper, I would have to sell it for $1,000 for all the time it has in it. And I'm good with that. I don't care. So I went through and I did the black over everything. That immediately made everything pop to the surface and the background to recede. And so once I got that done, I'm like, okay, but now I wanted the flowers to show up even more. And so I went back with the Inktense pencils again over these flowers I had already done. And this one, I had done these 3, I think. And I added more Inktense pencils, blended it out again using the iridescent medium and water. And so I have done these flowers on this side. I've done these flowers using that process. Some of them have the details in the petals, some don't. I'm going to go back and add some more details in the petals on the other ones, probably. Probably not on the small ones, but on the big ones. And in the centers, I put some yellow Inktense pencil and blended that just to get more of a center instead of even over a black center, the yellow came up and showed up, which was nice. This side is just the black ink lines. So you can see the difference in the depth, let's say, of this flower. Let's say this flower versus maybe this one next to the neighbor, or this one. This one looks more three-dimensional. This one has a little bit more of a three-dimensional look than this one is very flat. Okay. Yeah, I got a message from her, from Starla the other day. She was having she had a headache, I think, last week. So that's why she was so quiet. So I did hear from her on one of those direct messages on social media. So I think she's doing okay. I think so. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do with this is what I'm thinking I'm going to do is go this way with it, cut it in half, and make two smaller journals, and stitch some covers inside this is what I think I'm going to do. That way I can get two small journals out of it. I could go this way and get landscape journals out of it, but I find it more useful to have more of a portrait. To me, the proportion is better this way than going this way, doing it in half this way. Either one's fine, but that's just my preference. So anyway, so the thing that you want, the point of this discussion with you is to say, don't get stuck. If you don't care for the result you got, change it. Do something different. Okay? You don't have to be stuck with something you don't like. And I can't tell, I have a piece of artwork here. It's here, but it's not here in the room with me. It's here. I've moved it. But it's a canvas I've had on the wall. It's made of fabric paper, the process with construction paper and all of that. I've had it hanging on my wall in the other studio for years, and I never liked it. I tried to like it. I tried to like it for a really long time. I never did like it. So when you move, you go, I didn't like that back then. I'm not going to move the thing. I'm just going to take it apart because I had attached it to a canvas background. And the artwork itself has possibilities, but the way I had put it together, I didn't like it. So I pulled that off. As soon as I find it, I'll show it to you because we're going to rework it. And I threw the canvas in the dumpster. I brought the artwork that has possibilities because I'm going to do something with that. Not today, but at some point. Hey, Dana, good to see you. Okay, Rhonda. Yeah, got it. So there you go. So that's where we are today. All right. In the process of looking for something, I was at Hobby Lobby. Sometimes at Hobby Lobby, and I haven't done this in a long time, but sometimes I used to do this a lot, and I also did it at the bookstore. I would go to Hobby Lobby and wander every single aisle in the place. And I would do it at Michael's, and I would do it at Dick Blick if there was a store, but there isn't. So when I have the opportunity to take my time and go through every single aisle of every single aisle and look at every shelf on every single aisle, I don't care if it's things I'm interested in or not. What it does for me is it inspires me, and there are times I find things that I had no idea I was going to stumble across, and that happened last week. years ago, and I've shown you the gnomes. I have 3 of these, but for whatever reason, these 3 gnomes insist on being separated. I don't know if the 2 boys don't like the lady or if the 2 boys don't like each other, but I turned this room upside down this morning and still couldn't find them. I found these 2, which have been gone for a long time. I found them and brought them with me, but I can't find the other one that I've shown you before. Anyway, it's irrelevant. So these are gnomes that I did back in the 70s or early 80s, because that's when gnomes were super popular back then, because of this book called Gnomes. Okay. And so I wanted to show you this book, and I have had this since my decorative painting days. These are actually painted with oil paint. Okay, these are done in oil. You have a sticker with them. You have the book. Oh, you have the book. Yeah, it's a fun book. So these are done with oil paint. Believe me, it is much easier to do this with acrylic than it is oil. Doing any kind of thing like this that's small and it's edge to edge is very hard to keep your hand out of oil paint. You have it too. Well, it is a fun book. I don't have any idea. I know it's not available, they're not currently printing it, but you could look for this online, thrift books or, one of those, and see what you can find out if you have an obsession with gnomes. And there are some things in here that I can't show you. There are some things I can. There's only a couple of things but they're so cute. There's the gnome mama, and like sun goggles, because gnomes only come out at night, and some of their artwork and daily routine. I mean, it is so funny to go through and read, because it's written like a manual about gnomes. Okay, so this is where this guy came from. Okay, that's where he came from. And this was in the 70s, when copyright and the computers weren't out there and copyright wasn't a big deal. This is the other one that I've shown you guys before, but he's currently hiding from me somewhere. These are the actual patterns that we used on those little pieces, those little wood cutouts. But I mean, it is so funny to watch, because it is like everything, like injuries, for example. The illustrations are wonderful, but the story is amazing. Like here, to treat snake bite, apply a tourniquet, open the wound, and suck out the poison. If this does not have the desired effect, or if one's life is still in peril, speedy transport to the Gnome Royal Court is the next best thing. There, a cure-all, a semi-sorcerer, has all kinds of antidotes at hand. So it's just funny things, and there's a broken leg, and, it talks about how long they live and what they look like, and here's the Mr. and Mrs., and talks about courtship. And this one is 275 years old, and this one is 346 years old. And when 350 years old or older, she begins to show a light beard. That's something to look forward to. And quite frankly, that's something that hasn't changed, but at least we don't have to. Yeah. But there's also, we could have a whole discussion about that. Just that whole thing, couldn't we? I was going to see if I could find it. There's a whole thing about when gnomes get really old and what happens to them. Yeah, here we go. Growing old. You can be grateful you're not a gnome. Okay, growing old. Even a gnome's life must come to an end. Over 400 years of age, the male rapidly becomes stiff and forgetful, though other gnomes still respect him. Eventually, the shriveled up old man develops a tendency to wander. Sounds familiar. His wife displays the same symptoms. She begins almost the same age, she being almost the same age herself. The housekeeping begins to suffer. The house starts to decay and becomes dark and dirty. On one particular night, the aged couple does not return from their wandering. They have begun their journey to the mountain of death, never seen by human eyes. And with the certainty of the migratory bird, they will find it. If they are not attacked on the way by animals of prey, something to look forward to, huh? As soon as they die, their birthday tree begins to get dead branches, unless it is used by more than one gnome. See timekeeping. Lives beyond 400 years or so have seldom been recorded, with the exception of a married couple in the Balkans who lived 550 years. But they were looked after for a great while by generations of a farming family who placed a bowl of yogurt in the stable for them every day. So apparently that's where they lived. They each had an olive tree on the Adriatic Sea. So anyway. Okay. That's the history. Why do I still have this book? I don't know. I didn't even know if I had it. I found it this morning and went, I saved that one. Right? Okay. Well, back to the Hobby Lobby story. So I was at Hobby Lobby last week, or 2 weeks ago, looking around for something. And I happened to see this shape, which I'll show you. I'm just trying to get zoomed in a little bit. Bye, Connie. Be safe. Have fun. Have fun. Okay, I saw this shape, and I don't know. There's a thing about houses. I love houses. Maybe it's because I'm moving houses that this really grabbed my attention. This is, this has a lot of work in it, and the thing cost $5.49. Okay, that is not enough for everything that went in to create this. Anyway, I walked on a little bit because I picked it up and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do with that, but I'm going to do something. So I walked on a little further, and then don't you know, there was this set of wooden cutouts. There are 3 gnomes and a mushroom. Okay? And I looked at that and I thought, those go together. They will be fun to create a gnome house, although it doesn't look exactly like the gnome houses that are in the book. I think we can make it look like a gnome house. And we can paint these gnomes to look like something fun, right? And these were, for these 4 at Hobby Lobby, were $1.99. Laser wood cutouts. Okay, well, not only did I decide that I was going to do that, I went back because I decided that it needed another. 4 is not a comfortable thing for me, and I decided it needed to have another mushroom. So don't you know, I had to buy another whole set of these in order to get the one mushroom that I really wanted. So this is what we're going to play around with. If you too want to play around with making your own gnomes, except we're going to do these in acrylic, not in oil. If you want to do that, you can look online, or you can paint it on a piece of paper or whatever you want to. Okay? And gnome, sweet gnome. Exactly. Joan, that should go on our little house, shouldn't it? All right, now, when you approach things like this, which are raw wood, They have been laser cut, and they're made of, I don't know, it looks like a birch plywood or something. I don't really know. It doesn't really matter. But when you approach things like this and they're raw wood, you have a couple of choices. One of the choices is you can seal the wood to start with. And so you can do that with either a varnish, or sometimes you have an actual wood sealer that you can use. And that will actually seal the wood surface, and then you can sand it. And it makes it, it doesn't take as much paint to cover it. Okay. Well, I've done that, and it's not my preference. I would rather seal the wood with paint as to seal it with a sealer. Now, different artists, different creative people have different ideas, and that's perfectly fine. I've pulled out a palette of colors that are, as we go through this process, these are all inexpensive acrylic paints. And so that's what I'm going to be using for this process. And I'll go through the colors as we do it. I'll explain to you why I'm doing what I'm doing, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to show you what I have. I've just barely started this so that you would be able to see what I'm doing. And I'm going to take this one. So I have multiple gnomes at this point, of course. So we're going to start with this little guy right here. And I'm going to zoom in really close so that you can really see what I'm doing, hopefully. And then the challenge is to stay on the screen. Sorry about the ugly finger bandaged up, but it is what it is right now. So I'm going to explain to you why I'm doing what I'm doing here. So I'll start with the one that I have, and then I'll switch to the other ones that are a little further along. So this little gnome that I'm going to show you is this little guy. And this is from one of the packages, the fresh out of the package raw wood. And the design that's on here, I'm assuming has been stamped with something, because it has no, there's no difference in the surface. There's no indentations, so it is just a stamping of some kind. So I wasn't sure how that was going to work, but I thought, well, we'll find out. Anytime that you're going to do things on a painting process that involves white or light ivory or anything that's close approaching white, you want to do that part first. It doesn't make it look good to begin with, I'll grant you that, but it's much better if you put the white on first and then you paint up next to it with the other colors, especially if you're doing something in oil paint. You almost have to. Otherwise, if you do something with red or dark blue or something, and it scoots in, encroaches on the white parts of whatever the thing is, and you come back and put white over it, the other colors are either the white part's going to turn pink or pale blue, or the oil paint or the darker color is going to shadow up through the white, and that's my experience. Okay, so I'm going to use a waxed paper. This is just a disposable palette, and I'm going to have it off to the side because you know how cameras love white. And I'm going to show you how to paint this little guy, how to start out. And so he is, I'm going to put white beard and white mustache. And the spots in his hat, I'm not going to make white. I'll do those some other color. But my white of choice is light ivory. This is Delta Ceramcoat. And this is my choice color for white. there is a difference between pure white. Let's see if I can. Pure white and the light ivory. Pure white is on my right, light ivory is on my left. And then this is the other one that I use from time to time, but this is not, this is antique white. It's almost more of a buttermilk color. It's very hard to show the difference in white on the camera. Okay, white, light ivory, and antique white. But for most white things, I prefer to use light ivory as my starting point. I find that the antique white is too yellow, and I find that white is just too stark. Okay, so there is light ivory against the white surface, and that's pretty accurate, seeing those two this color against that. That's pretty accurate. Okay, all right, so I'm going to just have the palette off to the side a little bit. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to move it out of the way because it's just so white. The brushes that I like to use are just cheap craft brushes, and I don't mind scumming them up, leaving them in water because they're cheap. You buy a whole set of them for not very much money. For this kind of painting, it's fine. So I'm going to dip the brush in water. So I have a container of water right up here, just above, out of the shot. So I get some white or some water on the brush, and then I dip it in the paint and I blend it a little bit, because you got to have it liquidy enough that the paint will move on the raw wood, because I have not sealed this. So you got to have something in it, otherwise it hits the raw wood and it just sucks it in so quickly that it I'm going to tip this up a little bit. There we go. It sucks the paint in so fast that it dries on contact almost. All right, so what I'm doing, I'm going right over the little mustache, because I discovered that the lines would come right back. Now, I'm not going over all the lines, but like the mouth and stuff, I'm painting around that. And I'm getting as close to the line for the face as I possibly can. And then I'm going to come around and just keep picking up that kind of, it's not inky consistency, but it is a wetter consistency than the paint straight out of the bottle. Now, if your bottle of paint is brand new, it may be more liquid than this one that I have, which has been sitting around for a while. So you might not have to pick up as much, carry as much water with it. And sometimes you pick up a piece of dried matter from the paint, otherwise known as a paint booger, and so there is our little gnome. Now you see all this fuzzy stuff that came up. See the fuzz right in here? Okay, raw wood, when you get it wet, whether it's with water, especially with water, but with paint, with varnish, with sealer, with anything, it will raise the wood, the grain of the wood. You can see that, how it's fuzzed up a little bit. Now, if you were doing a fine piece of something, furniture or whatever else, if you were going to really care about this, what you would do is let the grain raise, and then you come back with a real fine sandpaper and you knock all the fuzz off of it. Okay, well, I don't care about that, so I'm not going to do that. Okay, I'm just going to leave it alone. I'm going to come over to the same guy, which is this one. And this one has been dried. And I don't know that you're going to be able to see. Maybe you can. See, it's not that fuzzy at this point. There's a little bit of it, and if I feel it, there's a little bit of it. And to get around that, I can actually go over this and paint it again. The advantage to painting it the second time, and sometimes you don't have to thin the paint down quite as much, but the advantage to doing it a second time is it helps to smooth out the surface. Now I'm painting with an angle brush, which you'll see me flip the brush around in my hand all the time. I tend to paint with the longer part of the brush that's the part that I like to work with. And that's where my brush control comes from. So that is the thing that is allowing me to maintain the control of where the paint goes, is that longer part. See that longer edge? That's the part that I'm using. So that is my leading edge of my paintbrush. I didn't paint with angled paintbrushes for a long time, and when I first started using them, I'm like, ugh, I don't think I'll ever like this. But there was somebody that I was watching who always used an angled paintbrush, and I don't remember. It could have been Dee Dee Willingham. I don't remember for sure. Anyway, I thought, that's probably a good thing for me to do. And once I got used to it, I really, really like the angled paintbrushes. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick second coat on these guys. They've had one coat. And then while they dry, which will take very little time, especially the first coat, it dries almost on contact. Second coat takes just a little bit longer. And do you have to do 2 coats? No, but I figured I like the result better. And I figure if I'm going to spend time on these little things, I'm just going to show you how you can get a good result with something that's super cheap. And you can still have a good time working on them. So the second time you don't have to be quite as picky about getting up, pushing up next to lines and stuff like that. So there's that little guy, okay? And then one more little guy. He's also had one coat on his beard. And I'm going to come right here, and I'm going to paint right over his mouth. And I found that even if I went over it with a second coat of paint, and even though those lines are not particularly well defined, like they're not engraved or whatever, I could still see where things were. And, here's the beauty of it. If by some chance those lines disappear on you, that's okay. You can just make it up after that. And if you get sloppy, like I just did, if you have another brush available, dip it in water. So dip the brush in water and then pat it on a paper towel, and then you can come in and you can clean up where you slopped the paint. Okay? Now you may not be able to see that, but it was there, so just thought I would show you how to correct yourself. But I use that angle, the long angle of the brush, as my leading edge. For years and years and years, I only painted with regular flat brushes, and once I got used to the angled brush, I was really happy that I did, because I can do a lot with one brush without having to change sizes of brushes all the time. And I also paint with the biggest brush I can. And by having that angled brush, I can get into some pretty tight spaces by using that angle, that longer angle. I don't like to clean brushes very well, and as a result, I will use the biggest brush that I possibly can. One of the things that doesn't make sense to me, but sometimes I've seen people paint things, no matter what it is, with tiny, tiny little brushes, and I'm like, oh, that'll drive me crazy. Use the brush, watching. Oh, good. Very good. I'm glad, Linda. Okay, so then to clean out the brush, I just swish the brush through my water container, and then I use my finger, and I'm not pulling against it, I'm just squashing it into the paper towel. Okay. All right, so I'm going to let those guys just kind of do their thing over there. So now we have this little mushroom that's partially painted. And I'm going to have to do this other mushroom as well. We'll do a couple of dots on this one just so you can see. So what I did, same brush, didn't do anything different. Same brush, back, same consistency of paint. I've done nothing to this mushroom. And I would come in here. Now, some people don't want to use this big a brush to do these little polka dots. I just don't want to clean another brush, so I'm going to figure out how to do that. So just because you have the width of brush doesn't mean you have to use the whole width of the brush. Okay? You can just come in here and use that longer pointy part of your angled brush and let it do the work for you. Okay? And then we have a dot. Even this little guy right here, I can do the same thing. I just use the longer angled point of the brush. And this time, instead of painting, I'm just kind of dabbing the paint into that little spot right there. Okay, so I would do that with this little mushroom. I would do all the spots like that, and then I'd come back and give them a second coat. And now I'm going to go to, yes, using one brush. It makes a huge difference. No, you're welcome, Julie. You're welcome. And earlier today when I was prepping for this, the whole end of my brush came off. Okay, the handle came out and the whole end came off. That's how cheap these brushes are. Well, I like this little brush. So I reached back and I got my Beacon 3-in-1 glue, and I put some around the end of the wooden part of the handle and shoved it back up in there. And so far it's staying put. I don't care if it's a cheap brush. If it's a brush that works for me and a brush that I like, I'm going to fix it and use it. Okay, so the red paint, the red color by Joan. It's going to be a while, but we're going to play with it until we get it done, because there's lots of stuff we can do on learning on, you know, an inexpensive little thing that nobody feels like, oh, I have so much money invested in this is cheap, so you can learn. This is the red that I like to use. I don't like real bright red. Now, when you look at this, this looks pretty bright red, but it's not. It's this tomato spice. This is my preferred red, Delta Ceramcoat. I will use whatever brand of paint I want to use. I don't need to only use one brand of paint, but I do find that the colors that I like, it is a sad, sad day for me when they discontinue a color of paint that I like to use. Tomato Spice so far is still around. But I like Americana paints. I like Delta Ceramcoat. I like the Apple Barrel paints. You know, I like all of them. Once again, so the white spots are dry, even though you really probably can't tell. If I angle it, you might be able to see the white spots. I don't have to put too much water in this because this bottle of paint is not particularly old. The light ivory bottle of paint, it's got some age on it, so the paint was thicker in the bottle, but still usable. So I just used that edge of my brush, the pointy edge, the long edge, and you see I just slopped some paint up on my polka dots. So I'm going to go back to my clean brush, get some water, dab it off on the brush or on the paper towel, and then I'm going to try to chase that red back out of there. And if I can't get it out because it is the raw wood, then I'll just paint. Once it's dry, I'll come back and paint a fresh coat of white over the top of it. This is the danger I face of holding this up in the air to paint for you, is I'm not always super accurate. But remember, these 4 pieces all together cost me 1 penny less than $2. So you know what? It's okay with me if it's a cheap surface to paint on. But if you have a little bit watered down paint, not super watered, but a little bit, like a touch of water into what you're doing, it will get the paint to flow more smoothly. Now, having said that, when you're painting with acrylic paint, you will get a buildup of paint on your brush, and every so often, even though you're not finished painting whatever it is you're working on, you're going to need to stop and wash out your brush and get the thick part of that paint out of your brush, because it's going to start to dry in the brush and it will start to make your bristles all splay out. This one's still in fairly good shape, even though it doesn't look like it, but you'll need to take your paper towel, swish it through the water, and I'm not after getting it totally clean, but what I'm after is to get that thick paint that's up here, most of it, out. Okay? That's what I'm after. That's a ratty looking brush, but still works, so I'm still using it. Yep, ratty looking brushes. All right, let's see if we can get the rest of this coated here. And it's best if you do this all at one time. Now, I painted part of this earlier today and then I stopped, which is probably going to give me a specific line of paint, but I won't know that until it totally dries, till the red completely dries. And to help avoid that, I'm just going to brush a little bit of paint over into that part that I did before, just to see if I can help distract a specific dried line of paint, line of color. All right, let's see if we can do, we've got one more spot we got to go around. when you're painting around something like this, you just have to go slow. There's no way around it. You just have to go slowly enough and turn the thing in your hand. Now, if I'm doing this, I'm not doing it for you. It's down on the table, and I am turning it around and around. I'm not holding it up in the air with my hand. But I find it easiest to pull the brush toward myself. I would think that you would find it easiest to pull the paintbrush toward yourself because you can see where you're going. If you try to push the brush away from you, you're not going to be able to see what you're doing. So, okay. And I'm coming up against the bottom of the cap of the mushroom. And trying to do this accurately and talk at the same time. And let's see, we got a little bit of this right here. And the other thing I do when I'm painting is most of the time I have my glasses off because I see better up close with my glasses off than with them on. We're not all like that. That just happens to be my particular vision situation. Okay, I've got a chunk of paint down here, and so I'm going to see if I can, or maybe that's a line. That must be the line in the, mushroom. I thought it was a chunk of paint, but it's not. Okay, so for the mushroom cap and the stem, I chose to use a light brown. This was fawn. And the fawn is the straight fawn I used for the mushroom cap. And this just happens to be, there's any number of tan kinds of colors. I'm going to try and get most of the red out of my brush, and to do that I am just squashing the paint. I'm getting the brush wet and then I just squash it with my finger. If you take this and you start pinching and pulling with these inexpensive brushes, you're going to rip the bristles right out of these brushes because they are that cheap. Okay, so squash. That's how you clean them. Okay. They do. Royal Langnickel is a good company, good brush company. Okay, this paint's a tad bit thick, so I have to put a little bit of water in with it to get it thinned out enough that I'm going to get it to be able to move. And so for the cap, again, I'm watching where that long part of the brush is. And painting the cap of the mushroom. And I've done this once already. And then because I wanted the stem to be different, I picked up some of the light ivory. And you're better off to do not what I did, which was to put the light in the dark. You're better off to put the dark into the light. You can control your color much better. But that's not what I did, so I'm going to have to work a little bit. Okay, that's a different color than the cap of the mushroom, and that's all I'm after. So I would base coat in, this is called base coating, where you're just painting one color I would base coat every part of these little wooden pieces. And the house we're going to leave for another time. We're not going to deal with the house right now. Because first of all, I haven't decided exactly how I want it to look. I need to play with it on paper a little bit and do some different designs. And I actually Googled gnome houses, and there were some darn cute designs. Whoops. For gnome houses. Okay, hang on a second. I'm going to get most of that off my mat, maybe. Okay, so I got most of that off. And I'm going to refold my paper towels so that I have most of that out of the way. Okay, back to where we were a second ago before I slopped paint. And I'm going to just mix up. So you see now I have the light paint over here and I'm just touching the dark and mixing into the white. You get it's a much better idea than mixing into the dark. Trying to mix light into dark, you're just going to end up with a huge pile of paint that you're not going to need. If you mix dark into light, you can control how much paint you make. But I would do a couple of base coats of the color in every section. That is going to seal the wood, and it's going to give you a good surface to work on. And the base coat just means, again, it's just one flat coat of paint. Okay? So there's our little mushroom with its cap, its spots, and so forth. Okay? All right. Now, I'm going to paint my grasses, my little things of grass down here. And I have two greens that I pulled out. One is green tea, Americana green tea. The other one is Americana light avocado. So we're going to see if these are good. Sometimes my paints, even if they're brand new, have been sitting around long enough that they've really thickened up. So we'll find out. The other thing is that the binder will separate from the pigment, and so sometimes it squirts out this just clear liquid, and that's, you got to stop and shake the you-know-what out of the paint. Alright, so we have two colors of green, a light green and a darker green. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the darker color back here. So I'm going to take that, but I'm going to put a little bit of light in it so that I kind of have these two talking to each other. Like, we want them to be neighbors, cousins. If you use paint consistently straight out of the bottle or the tube, it looks very color booky, which is not a bad thing at all if you're coloring in a coloring book, but I don't often like it to look that way on something that I'm painting. Okay, now we'll talk about edges here in a second also. Let me go on to this one in the front. I'm going to use more of the light. I did not clean out the brush. I just picked more of that light color up with whatever was on my brush. And I'm just going to paint this one in like so. Okay, so we're going to paint this one all the way in. And I'm just constantly, anything that demands attention for a line, I use that long point on the brush to do that. Okay, let me get my chat back here. Okay, there we go. Bye, Barbara. Thanks for being here. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is do the other. I'm going to turn it around in my hand. So I paint the way that it is the most comfortable for me. So that means I turn things around in my hand, and then I'm going to paint. Like so. All right, and while I've got this darker green in my brush here, I'm not even sure I was on camera, sorry you guys. Well, I've got the darker green on my brush. I'm going to come over here and just add a second coat. But you see, I can go much faster the second coat than the first coat because I'm not having to be quite so picky about the detail where the lines are between the two, the division between the two big blades of grass. The base coat stage of anything in wood is just like painting, prepping your walls on your house for paint. The better you prep at this stage, the better your finished coat's going to be, your finished item is going to be. So if you prime your walls with paint with a primer, you're going to get a much better look on your painted walls. If you choose not to prime your walls, or if you choose not to size the walls, if you like wallpaper, if you choose not to size the walls, you end up with a result that you're usually not as happy with. And it's no different when you're painting, even though this cost 50 cents, this thing. I don't even know how they sell these things for 50 cents, honestly. I really don't. But you can have it look like it cost a dime, or you can have it look like it costs a lot more than that. But that depends on, that truly depends on how much time you take at this stage. All right, let's see if we can get this one a second coat. And I got a little bit sloppy here, so I'm going to see if I can clean that up. Okay. All right, not bad. So there's our little mushroom that is base coated. Okay. So let's take one of these little gnomes over here. Obviously I can't do them all on camera. We'd be here for a really long time. But we'll kind of get the idea going. Before I do that, let's talk about edges, the edges of the ornament. I'm going to use one of the oil painted ones to show you, give you a demo. You see how these edges, whatever the shape is, I carried it around the edge. And now it's not painted on the back. I didn't want to paint the back of it, but I painted the edges of whatever the thing was all the way around. So all the edges from the front, the color is carried around on the edge, and that makes a huge difference in the way the piece finishes, the way that it looks when you're all done. Same thing here. Even though she is kind of bland in her coloration, those colors, whatever is right next to the edge, that's what I carried all the way around. As opposed to this, you can see what that looks like. I've not done any of that, and you really can see all of this raw wood edge here. Now on this one I have a choice. Do I carry the white on around the edge, which I probably won't. I will probably just paint it red around the edge, but I will change to the tan under the cap of the mushroom and down here, down the stem, and I'll change to green around the blades of the grass. Now you're going to have to go down to a little teeny pointy brush in order to get down in those little narrow crevices, but that is something that really does make a difference in what you do. Okay, all right, let's go to one of the, let's go to, how about this guy? So the mushroom, this mushroom is base coated, and we're just going to set it to the side, other than the sides of him. So let's come over here to this guy. Now for the most part, their hats are red. Doesn't have to be. Your gnome could have whatever color he wanted. There are different kinds of gnomes. It said so in the gnome book. It surely did. Alright, I'm going to go back to the tomato spice, which these craft acrylics set up and get hard really fast. Dry out really fast and skim over, so you may have to put out fresh paint. That's why I don't put big blobs of paint on my palette. Now I did pick up a bigger brush. It's still an angled brush. Alright, I gotta take the glasses off so I can see what I'm doing here. Hopefully my head doesn't get in the way. And again, still using the long angle of the brush, taller angle. To control where the paint goes. You'll know that your paint is too dry, or you're working in a dry area on your palette, because as the paint starts drying and you add more water to it, it will start picking up flakes of paint. Then you got to kind of get those out of your painting before it dries into the painting surface. If it dries into the painting surface, then you're just going to have extra texture. Okay, so there he is with his little red hat. Their little boots are fuzzy. I don't know what they're made of, fur of some kind, I guess. Are you guys all still here? I don't see any chat happening. Just let me know if you guys are here. So I'm going to skip down to the boots, and I'm going to use the same green that we used up here. I'm going to use this green. And I'm going to pick up some of this light ivory if I can get some of it. That is some thick paint, and put into that. Just kind of model it. You're okay. Okay, thank you. And I'm going to paint his little boots with this kind of green, light green, but using the same colors. If you pick a palette of colors and then use those colors throughout the piece, you're going to be much happier with your result, because it's going to make the whole thing is going to look like it goes together. So if I wanted a lighter color, then I'm going to add light ivory into it. If I want a darker color, I will pick up the shading color that I want to use on something on here. But I'm not just going to willy-nilly grab more colors out of my box of paints. And believe me, I have plenty of colors in my box of paints over here. Okay, so we've got that done. Let's paint in his nose and his hands. The color that I like for flesh on any of these is it's another Ceram coat, Delta Ceram coat. It's called Santa's Flesh. Okay? Make sure you shake them up, especially if they've been sitting for a while, which my paints have been sitting for quite some time. So I'm going to use a little Santa's Flesh. So here's my palette of colors I've got going on. And let's see how this looks. Oh, it looks okay. Nice and creamy. That's good. And I'm going to go back to the small brush that I was using. This is nice and creamy, so I might not have to do much. Now this probably doesn't look much different than like the light ivory, but it is decidedly different. Alright, I'm going to use the small brush, and I'm going to paint in his nose. Still need to carry a little bit of water because that raw wood is so thirsty. Trying to decide how the best way is for you guys to be able to see. Hopefully I'm up close enough that you can really see what I'm doing here. So I guess one of the things that I encourage you to do is get something, if you want to learn how to paint, get yourself something that's not terribly expensive, such as these little gnome characters or something else, and some inexpensive brushes. You don't need to spend a lot of money on brushes for doing this kind of stuff. And decide on a palette of colors that you want to use. And just don't be afraid of it. If I get sloppy, I come back with a clean brush with some water that I've taken off almost all the water, and then I just come back from the other side of the line where I slopped it out. I come back and then I clean up what it was that I slopped outside of the line. I'm still going to use this big brush. I mean, it's big for the area. If it's too big, if you're not comfortable with it, with the brush that you're using, then just drop down a size. It's okay. If you're not, it's better that you feel comfortable with what you're doing than you go, well, Barb said. No, just work with whatever makes you feel comfortable and confident. But try, really do try. Try your best from time to time to push your comfort level a little bit. You'll be glad you did, because it makes you learn. That's how you learn. You do have to be aware of wet paint when you're working on something like this, so be careful that you don't grab the little hand or stick your finger. I use my finger to steady things all the time, so I have to be careful that I don't plant my finger in the wet paint to steady my hand, or lean against the part that I just painted. We had years and years ago, when I was pretty new at oil painting, I was just learning, and I don't remember what I was painting. It seemed like it was a canvas of some kind that had a lot of thick paint on it. I'm going to let that dry just a little bit before I go on. And we had a cat that, this was long time ago, back in the 70s. We had a cat that was prone to jump up, as cats will do. They're very curious, and they like to explore everything, right? So I had put the canvas on the freezer, which was in the utility room at the time. So I thought it was safe because it was up on there to dry. It was oil, and it was thick. The oil had thickness to it. And my husband, Clausman, had a jacket that was relatively new, of course, work jacket, fortunately. And he had taken that jacket off and had left it in, I don't know if it was on the floor or what, I don't remember. I don't have a clue. Anyway, he left it there. The cat went in, jumped up on the freezer, walked through the paint, and walked across his jacket. Now, he wasn't real fond of cats at that point in time, and I'm like, wow, this is not going to go well. This is not going to go well, because he's going to hate this cat even more than he already hates cats. I worked really hard and really fast to try to get that paint out of that jacket, and I got most of it out. There was a little bit left, but he never knew the difference. Fortunately. Oh goodness, that cat. I thought, oh, this is terrible. Couldn't believe it. Here's all these little cat oil paint cat prints. Yeah. Indeed. The worst part about these bottles of paint, if you do what I do, which I store them upside down, the worst part about them is that they develop an air bubble. And so sometimes after you have squirted out the amount of paint you want, then you want to close the cap, but it doesn't want to go closed because it keeps dispensing paint. So you have to kind of be the boss of the paint. But these bottles of paint don't cost that much, you know. So don't worry about wasting a little bit of paint. You can always take a scraper and you can pick all this paint up when you're done for the day, and you can scrape it into a journal. That way you don't lose any of it. Okay. So what I have, okay, you're not going to cooperate with me now. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a blue, and I picked up, this is baby blue. That's the color I picked up. This gnome is, although you can't really see it, his jacket is blue, but it's very dark. You can't base coat anything in really dark like that. If you do, you have no place to go to add shading. So I'm using this baby blue, which is this color, and I'm going to mix a little bit of pewter gray. So this one's Americana, this one's Apple Barrel. I'm going to mix those together so that I darken that blue, be a little bit on the light side, but I need to have, I can't go really dark, not as dark as I want it in the end, or it's not going to go well. Okay, so what he has here is he has a belt and he has his jacket. So we're going to try to avoid his belt. Okay, so he's got a sleeve and he's got, okay, that's belt. Okay, he's got a sleeve and a little part of his jacket. Jacket, sleeve, those are, and this is jacket down here. Okay. Just trying to get my bearings here, and I may have to get a tiny brush here. Terry says, when I was home, okay, I don't know why my computer decided to not work. When I was home on maternity leave with a 3-year-old and a newborn, I decided to paint 3 rooms in our house. Not a good idea. Only had one incident when the 3-year-old backed up against the wall. That was pretty good. Paint has a way of getting around. Isn't that true? That's pretty good. Okay, so let's come back. So I've got a teeny tiny little round brush because I'm going to have that to get into. Probably have to use that to get into some places here that I'm not sure I can get into with this brush. But I'm going to try with this one first. So I'm going to set the round one off to the side. There I go, painting my mat again. And I'm going to mix a little gray into this so it takes it from that pure blue into a little smokier blue color. Okay, so this is more what I'm wanting up here. This one. This is a little too smoky. This one over here is a little more what I like, but it's not that pure baby blue. Okay. All right, so let's see. Okay, I'm going to get rid of all the paint that's in the brush, or all the excess, and I'm going to start over. So I'm a little less, let's put this over here so you can see. I don't know what I started to say. Oh, so I don't have so much sloppy paint happening. Sometimes when you let all that paint build up in the brush, it starts going places you don't want it to go. All right, let's see if we can make this work. All right. I will finish base coating this little guy in with you guys today, and then we'll call it a day. Okay, got it. All right, let's see. Well, there's a little bit. Let's see whether I can, oh, that's more sleeve right there. So he's got a little bit of sleeve here and a little bit more of his coat. This is risky doing this, I'm just telling you. I'd be way better off to switch to that little round brush. But you know what? I'm just living on the edge. Not bad. Okay. So let's come over. Okay, so this is also coat right here. But this is what I mean by taking your time and doing the very best prep that you can. So the best possible base coating that you can possibly do, because your end result is going to be so much better if you do that. Ugh, lost my chat again. I'll be back with the chat here in a second. I have to get it back here. So everybody just hold the fort for a minute. If you have a question, I'm not looking at the chat. It's because I lost my chat. I will get it back here in just a second. Okay, and then we're going to do this little edge down here, the edge of his coat. And anything that I feel like I need to give it a second coat, you know, where it's not covering very well, I will come back and do that. But I won't make you guys sit here and watch. Okay, and that is just about it on this part of his coat. And then we've got sleeve. So he's got a little sleeve over here. So he's got a little sleeve. He's got funny little, I guess his beard must be over part of his sleeve, because he's got, his arm is way too skinny for that. So we're going to pretend that that's what's going on. So his beard must be hanging over his sleeve over on this arm. And then we got this little piece of his coat under his arm. Like so. Okay, and then what we have left to do is to put in his belt. So let me clean the brush out here. And for his belt, I gotta get my chat back just a second. Okay, got the chat back. For his belt, let me look in the book. Oh, his belt is just a leather, looks like a leather belt. Okay. We're going to do his belt in gold. Bye, Julie. You are welcome, Terry. You are absolutely welcome. Okay, this color is spicy mustard. Okay, so it's kind of a yellow ochre sort of color, a little bit. It really is pretty much a yellow ochre color. On screen it looks brighter, but that is the color right here. It looks pretty yellow. It's not. It's much more yellow ochre-ish. Okay, I'm going to drop down to the tiny little round brush at this point, but I'm going to use it like a flat brush, and I'm going to show you what I mean about that. So I'm going to get some water on my brush, and then I'm going to pull out some paint, but I'm going to use this. Normally with a round brush, I am loading the brush like this. Okay, I'm getting paint and then twisting it to a point so it maintains that round shape. For this, because I just want to use it as a little flat brush, I'm just going back and forth. So I'm actually spreading, so I'm forcing that round into a flat shape across the end. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to use a little, I'm going to see what happens if I put just a tad bit of this gray into it to knock a little bit of that brightness. And so I like that better. I've got just a little, knocked a little bit of that yellow off. Okay, so here we go. Let's see if we can stick this yellow color in here where his belt is. I'm going to turn him this way so I can kind of see what's happening. I'm just barely touching those little places. Tiny little places where his belt is. Whew, now we got that done. Now all we need to do is the bigger part of his belt over here. And I've got to lay it down on the table so I can steady it, because these are tiny little areas. Doing something like this can really help you learn to control your brushes, and so I strongly recommend you do stuff like this. And if for some reason if your hands shake or that kind of thing, know that we're going to come back and we're going to do some outlining and stuff later, and so that can correct a myriad of issues. So don't refuse to do things just because, oh, my hands shake, or that kind of thing. Don't let that be an excuse that causes you not to try. Okay, so there's our little gnome. This one is base coated. I still need to do the edges and go back and inspect him to see if there's parts that need a second coat. But there is our little gnome number 1. And then we have this guy and this guy to do. And then here is the mushroom, who is all done, base coated anyway. It needs another coat of red. You can see how that's splotchy. I want that to be smoother, so I'll give it another coat of red. And then I need to paint this one, because we can have mushrooms on both sides of their little house, don't you think? I do. All right, so that's going to be what we're going to be. That's what we're going to be done with for today. You put a little picture frame. When my son, speaking of children, as Terry was, when my son was, he was about 3, maybe 3.5, and he still took a nap, sort of. Oh, it was a sad day in my life when he stopped taking a nap, I will tell you what. Because I needed the nap as much as he needed a nap, I thought. I needed the nap. Let's just be honest. And so he decided he was at the edge of not needing that afternoon nap. So anyway, one afternoon, he asked me if he could sleep in our bedroom, take his nap in our bedroom. And I'm like, okay, sure, that'd be fine. It's like whatever it takes, just so I get a little bit of a break. So he was very quiet for a very long time, very quiet. And I went in I don't know if I went to get him up or if he came out and I went to see, check on him or something. Anyway, we went swimming a lot back then and at a lake. And he had gotten in, we had a bag that was a swimming bag, and he'd gotten into the swimming bag and found an ink pen. And so he had been on the other side of the bed where I couldn't see him, even if I peeked in to see what he was doing. He was on the other side of the bed, on the floor, with an ink pen, and had drawn quite a mural along the baseboard of the wall. I about had a stroke because I know how hard it is to cover up ballpoint pen. But he had drawn a horse and a dog, and I don't know what all else he had drawn. He had gotten into the bag, and he had found a little thing of mints. He had eaten all of those, and somewhere he found some perfume, and so he had taken that in. There was a bathroom off the bedroom, and he had taken that in, and he had dumped it in the toilet. Fortunately, it wasn't expensive. He had dumped it in the toilet and watched how it floated on the water. He thought that was really cool. And but the ink pen, the ballpoint pen mural on the wall, I was just astounded by. His dad thought it was funny. I thought his dad was probably going to kill me for not watching the child. He thought it was funny. And I now wish I'd taken pictures of it. The only thing I could think of to do was to try to scrub it off the wall as fast as possible. Anyway, yeah. So you kids do some funny things. And if I were to do that today, if that were to happen today, I would take pictures of it and journal about it. And then I'd probably paint over it. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Dorothy. Good to see you. I see your name in the chat. Hi, Crystal. Okay. I think that's all I have to say for it. It was panic. It was total panic. I think that's all there is to talk about today. I don't see anything else hanging around here on my table. Thank you for being with me. And I hope you have a great rest of your day, weekend, week, whenever you're watching. Thank you for watching. If you wouldn't mind giving us a thumbs up on your way out the door, you're always welcome to leave comments. I do read all the comments. I don't get them responded to very much anymore, but I do read them all. And I appreciate your interaction. Okay, that's going to do it for me. I will be back Monday night at 7 Eastern. So until then, as always, remember to get creative today because you know it's easy. And I'll see you before you know it. Bye for now.